All right, we are live. I hope you are all having a wonderful Friday, and we have many stories that we will talk about today, including some breaking news here today. Um, Go ahead and get comfortable. As always, we have Den here who is helping out with comment moderation, and you will see his comments in the comment box. He signs his name after those comments. And everyone, wish Den a happy birthday today. That's part one. I can't do this show without him, so I appreciate him so much. So wish him a happy birthday in the comments. Also, as a celebration, after I am done with this live stream, Den is going to be hosting a party at the Discord for this channel, and Den's going to put up the link to that in the comments and under here. If not now, then between stories, but we'll get that. There we go. So if you want to copy that down, Den, you can leave that up for a little bit so people can get the link. So after we're done with this show, I'm gonna like conk myself out and go to bed, but all the rest of you can hang out, and there's the link down there to chat. And in addition to that, Den told me there was a video I had to watch that I have not seen. So I'm going to pull it up. He actually has control of it, but I'm going to put it up here. And Den, if you want to go ahead and push play on this, I'm very curious what this is. Oh my God. It's very loud, but I like this. This is creepy. Nice. I disapprove of all of this because I don't like those pictures. But if that's my new intro, nice. Thank you so much, Den. That's fun. All right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get started in just a second with stories. You are going to comment and leave all the good stuff in the comment thread. As always, you can support the show by going right there, patreon.com/Hemant, and leave your super chats, and we'll get to them in between. Give me 1 second to pull this up, and we will get started. Let's do this right here. You have no idea how many tabs I have open for all of you right now. It's too many, but we're going to do this. Okay. Let's get started by talking about Ryan Walters, shall we? I know I talked about him like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. He makes a recurring appearance on this live stream, and that's mostly because he's like the most Christian nationalist dude. He's the Christian nationalist all the other ones point to and say, yeah, that guy's a Christian nationalist. Ryan Walters is the head of education, like the superintendent of public instruction in the state of Oklahoma. I've talked about him a bunch of times, but when I talked about him most recently, last week or 2 weeks ago, it's because he said he was wanting to spend $6 million to purchase Bibles for teachers all across the state of Oklahoma. Specifically, he said he had already budgeted $3 million to do this. Here's our buddy Ryan Walters right there. He already said he budgeted $3 million from his office to buy these Bibles, but he wanted another $3 million, and he was asking the state legislature, which is run by Republicans, to give him, double the amount for more Bibles, apparently. So, but right now he's sitting on $3 million. So one of the things he said during the school board meeting that he hosted like a week ago is that, he wanted to make sure it was a new King James version of the Bible, which is to say, like, the KJV is very old school, archaic. It reads like it was written in the 1400s, whereas the new KJV is a slightly more modern version of it. So he said, "Yeah, we want to get the new KJV. It's easier to read." Okay, fine. And then he also pointed out that the document, the Bible, could also have some historical documents there as well. You know, if you want to stick the US Constitution inside these Bibles, that would be okay too. And that was a little weird. And people started saying, you know what book has the Bible and some historical documents, like the Trump Bible that he's been hawking lately? And then we laughed it off because, of course, Ryan Walters is not saying we should buy Trump Bibles for the entire state of Oklahoma, right? The other thing I want to point out to you is that according to statistics released by the state, this is a list of teachers and students in Oklahoma as of, you could see in the upper left here, like 2021, 2022. That's the most recent numbers I could find. And if you look right over here, it says in 2022, Oklahoma had about 43,000 teachers and about 700,000 students. So 43,000 teachers in the state of Oklahoma. Now, according to the memo that Ryan Walters released over the summer, where he said everyone needs to start using the Bible, he basically said history teachers need a Bible, English teachers need a Bible. He actually didn't say like gym teachers need a Bible too, because why would they? But you get the idea. The core classes need a copy of the Bible in their rooms. But think about the math here. If there are 43,000 teachers in Oklahoma, they don't all need Bibles in their class. How many teachers need Bibles according to Ryan Walters? That's a low number. But for the sake of what we're going to talk about here, let's say all 43,000 teachers are going to get a Bible. How much would that cost? Well, I did the math last week. It's not hard. What's $6 million divided by 43,000 teachers? And the answer comes out to roughly $139 plus change for every Bible for every one of those teachers. Like, you could purchase a $139 Bible for every one of those teachers, which, again, why? Why are we spending that much money on a Bible per teacher, most of whom don't even need it? I don't know. It was weird. Anyway, why do I bring all this up? Because there's been an update to this story. You may have seen this in the news already. But this week, Ryan Walters released on his state's website, you could see here, there's Ryan Walters, Oklahoma State Department of Education. And this is something they posted on the website this week. And it's called a request for proposal, an RFP. Basically, what this is he's saying, we want to purchase a bunch of Bibles for the state of Oklahoma. Look at the number up there. It says 55,000. There are 43,000 teachers in Oklahoma, maybe more in the past couple of years, let's say, but let's say 45,000. Some of them, at least, do not need a Bible, but he wants to buy 55,000 copies. And basically what this RFP is it says, if you're a book publisher and you're willing to print up 55,000 copies of the Bible for us, here's what we're looking for. Here are the rules. Give us a price. Like, we can make all those Bibles for $10,000 and we'll send them to you right away. Will you give us a printing contract for that? And in theory here, a bunch of publishers can send in their bids. Like, they figure out it'll cost us this much to make. We got to make a profit. So this is the price we're offering your entire state. And then the State Department of Education can look at all the proposals and say, this is the best bang for our buck, and go with that company. So that's what they released. But then if you click on all these links and you look at the rules, the ground rules that Ryan Walters' office laid out, like, what do you have to have in these Bibles? Things get very interesting. So check this out. I'm going to page 1 of the document of what has to be in the Bible. Look at this. The bid response shall show the ability of the bidder to meet or exceed the following mandatory specifications. Let's see. What do we have first on the list? You got to make 55,000 Bibles with shipping, and you got to send it to every school district in the state, and you need to do it within 2 weeks. And we'll just stop there for a second. In order to print these Bibles, get them out to the schools within 2 weeks, you really can't start from scratch. You got to have this copy of the book like ready to go, preferably just sitting in a warehouse somewhere where you have thousands and thousands of copies, tens of thousands of copies, because no one wants to buy them and they're just lying there waiting for you to ship out. So already that first thing kind of excludes pretty much any publisher because you can't get this stuff up and ready in 2 weeks. By the way, I just saw an article last week because Robert Caro's book, The Power Broker, celebrated its 50th anniversary, and they were celebrating it by releasing a Kindle copy of a book that's like that thick. And the reason it took so long for that book to get on Kindle is because it took their people like over a year to get everything just right. And it takes that long to get the ebook ready. Imagine how long it's going to take to print up this special Bible with everything they need, even if it's already formatted and stuff, like to get it up and running and get physical. It takes a long time. All right, that's item number one. Number two, the supplier must provide only the KJV Bible for historical accuracy. Like, first, what? Historical accuracy? We lose historical accuracy on page 1. All right, so there's no historical accuracy happening here. Everything is a translation. Everything is prone to error. But also notice he said KJV Bible, not the new KJV Bible. Like, he wants the copyright-free KJV version that is really unreadable, certainly unreadable to most teenagers. So, like, you're not even getting the it looks like English version. You're getting the it looks like medieval times version. So that's weird. But the upside here is by using the KJV translation, you don't have to pay anyone like royalties for using their translation. Okay, but that's not the new KJV he said he wanted earlier. What's the next thing here? Oh, the Bible has to include. Remember, he said it could have some additional documents? Well, let's see. It has to include copies of the Pledge, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. First of all, which version of the Pledge? Are you using the In God We Trust version, like the 1954 revised version? Because it's kind of funny that they want the very, very old version of the Bible, but the very, very new version of the Pledge of Allegiance. The Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Like, again, that's a very weirdly specific list of documents. I mean, I guess the last three make sense, but why would you include the pledge in there? I mean, if you're going to go for historical documents that, promoted law and things like that, why not the Magna Carta? Why not other famous documents throughout history? That's weird. That's number 3. What else we got here? The supplier's Bible must not contain study guides, publisher narration, or additional commentary. So all the Bibles that publishers may have already made specifically for kids, teenagers, they always have like the cool versions of the Bible that you probably got when you were in Sunday school or something. None of those count. No commentary allowed. And then finally, the Bible has to be bound in leather or leather-like material for durability. Listen, textbooks are notoriously prone to break down, but like they do not need to be in leather or pleather or whatever. Like you can just have a hardcover copy of the Bible. Why leather? That's so weirdly specific. And it just increases the cost for no reason. That's weird. All of that is weird. Why are these the requirements for why you need all this stuff for your Bibles? It's so strange. Well, it didn't take long for people to connect the dots here because you may recall Trump was selling a Bible this summer. And if you look at the website for the Trump Bible, this is the Lee Greenwood version of the Bible. That Lee Greenwood, the God Bless the U.S. guy, dude, he couldn't sell them. And then Trump said, why don't you let me endorse it? I'll sell these Bibles and you give me a cut of the proceeds. And then they increased the cost and started selling it and called it like the Trump Bible. Well, if you go down here, the God Bless the USA Bible, let's see what this says here. It's in stock now for quick shipping. Wow, it's like they just have a bunch of them in the warehouse sitting there. Let's go on. Oh, look, it's the KJV translation. That's convenient. I mean, it's the version no one likes to read because it's old school, but okay, there we go. What's inside of this Bible? The US Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance. They just all happen to be in the book. Coincidentally, while we're at it, we'll throw in a handwritten chorus to God Bless the USA. And remember what Ryan Walters was saying, you got to have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything else, but you're allowed to exceed that if you want to. And so, the Trump Bible exceeds it by one. And as you could see from the picture, I'll scroll up here. That's a leather cover. Isn't that convenient? If we go down, how much does this Bible cost altogether? $60, and they're ready to go. So it's not hard to guess what they're doing here. Ryan Walters wants the state of Oklahoma to buy 55,000 copies of the Trump Bible for use across the state. And I know one of you is saying this in the comments now, but my favorite part about the Trump Bible website is that if you scroll all the way down and you skip all the pictures, they have the FAQ. Like, is this Bible officially endorsed by Trump? Yeah, it is. You can't get it online for free. We'll come back to that later. It's only hard copy version. But what if you go to the questions, the weirdest thing on here? What if my Bible has sticky pages? What? Why? Oh my God. Are some of the pages in your Bible sticking together? Was J.D. Vance reading it while lying on a couch? No worries. This is very common with new Bibles that have gold gilding around the edges of the paper. Anyway, it's such a weird version. It's such a weird thing for Trump to sell to begin with, but it's weird that Ryan Walters wants this to happen. Okay. Here's what I think happened. Ryan Walters thinks he has come up with a neutral way to send Trump his share of over $3 million of taxpayer money. That's pretty much what's going on here. And we know that because the requirements Ryan Walters laid out make no sense financially or academically. Because I've already talked about why the Bible shouldn't go to these teachers for church state reasons. That's in another video. But there's just no argument to be made for why you need not just the Bible, but why do you need this version of the Bible? Did you know the Bible is online for free? Did you know kids have access to phones, Chromebooks, whatever you want to say? They all have access to the Bible. There's no shortage of Christians willing to just give you as many Bibles as you want. I know that because they won't stop sending them to me. Like, go knock on the door of the Gideons. They give them to hotels all across the country. You know they have Bibles lying around doing nothing. Just get it from them. They love giving them away. Why are we paying? Why is Oklahoma paying $60 for 55,000 Bibles? Like, okay, so there's a newspaper outlet called the Oklahoma Watch. And basically they said, yeah, we know what's going on here, but there are so many versions of the Bible out there. Like, how many companies are eligible to send 55,000 copies with all these requirements to Oklahoma schools? And this is what the Oklahoma Watch found. They contacted one of the largest suppliers of Bibles in the country, Mardell Christian and Education. And look at this. A salesperson at Mardell Christian and Education searched, and though they carried 2,900 Bibles, none of them fit the parameters. 2,900 versions of the Bible, all of which are inerrant. And none of them would be good enough for Walters. Like the Trump Bible, you can only get through the website, so it's not one of those 2,900. As far as I can tell, and this was in the article, there's only one other Bible anywhere that seems to fit all the descriptions, all the requirements, like right away. And you'll never believe this. It's another Trump Bible that costs $89.99, sold at America's Superstore. I don't know. This is leather and it looks like it's been through shit. We the people. And then a bear clawed it into an American flag or something. That's the only other Bible that seems to fit the description here. But there you go. It's a different Trump endorsed Bible. So the only way Walters could have been more clear about what he wanted to do is if he demanded every copy of this Bible have a giant T on the front cover. And even then he would say, no, this has nothing to do with Trump. That's just a cross, you guys. What are you talking about? Now, the Oklahoma Watch reporters also spoke to people who might understand the legal side of things. This is interesting. The request for proposals on its face seems fair, but with additional scrutiny, we could see there are very few Bibles on the market that would meet these criteria, and all of them have been endorsed by former President Donald Trump, according to Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice Executive Director Colleen McCarty. Former Oklahoma Attorney General Drew Edmondson said this might violate state law. It appears to me that this bid is anything but competitive. It adds to the basic specification other requirements that have nothing to do with the text, like the leather cover. The special binding and inclusion of government documents will exclude almost all bidders. If the bid specs exclude most bidders unnecessarily, I could consider that a violation. Interesting. I mean, if they're illegally blocking out potential competitive bids, that could actually be a problem. The question is whether anyone in Oklahoma, in the legislature, the attorney general, the current one, will actually do anything about it. Like, there's no good reason to spend $60 per book unless the goal is to get curry favor with Donald Trump, which, I've said this before too. I think all Ryan Walters is trying to do is make his case for why in a future Trump administration, he should be the next Betsy DeVos, why he should be the next Secretary of Education. And I think that's all that's going on here too. There's another issue with all of this as well, which is that if you go back to the RFP, check this out. This just went up on the website earlier this week, I believe on October 1st. But look at how long you have to submit a bid. Monday, October 14th. Basically, Ryan Walters is giving everyone 2 weeks to submit a proposal that they can get 55,000 Bibles made. And usually, competitive bids for this sort of thing are usually open for 4 weeks. Why is Ryan Walters trying to shut down the window so no one else can apply in time? The only way that makes sense is if you're just waiting for one company to send in a bid proposal because they're the only ones you really care about. By the way, side note here, how funny would it be if the Satanic Temple found a way to make 55,000 Bibles with everything that they requested, along with the 7 tenets that the Satanists live by, slap a pentagram on the cover somewhere, and then sell it to Oklahoma for like $55. It would be amazing. I mean, I'm not saying I want Bibles in school, but if they're going to do this, have some fun with it. I have no doubt the Satanists could find a publisher willing to do this if they got the contract. I don't know. It would be funny. Anyway, all of this, by the way, is for a policy that may not even be legal anyway, because Walters only said y'all have to use the Bible in a memo that he sent to superintendents over the summer. And a bunch of superintendents, as I have said in a previous video, a bunch of superintendents have already told Ryan Walters they have no intention of playing along. They say, listen, if our history teachers need to reference the Bible for whatever reason, they're allowed to do it. They don't need a leather-bound copy of the KJV in the classroom to do it. They can just do whatever they need to do. Pull it up on a website, whatever. They have that leeway. So we're not following your stupid memo. And a whole bunch of superintendents have already told him that. So again, the question now is anyone going to investigate this? I don't know if they will, but the current attorney general, his name is Gentner Drummond. He is a Republican. However, he's been weirdly good when it comes to church state separation issues. He is the attorney general that when Ryan Walters said, let's give taxpayer money to a Catholic charter school, the first in the nation public school that would be a Catholic school, the attorney general said, yeah, we're not getting behind this. And we're asking the Supreme Court of our state to step in and knock this thing down. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court did. So, like, this attorney general might actually do something about it, but he hasn't said that yet. I should also remind you, a bunch of Oklahoma Republicans in the legislature have also asked for a formal investigation of Ryan Walters because he's doing a whole bunch of shady things that have nothing to do with the culture wars and church state separation. But until then, Ryan Walters is just doing his Ryan Walters thing. He doesn't give a damn about education. He is interested in promoting himself. Like, all these students across the state are worse off because this guy is too selfish and too ignorant to think about them. Kamala Harris has said this before of Donald Trump. Barack Obama said this of Donald Trump. Clinton maybe said it of Donald Trump. Listen to what he says because it's always about him. It's always me. It's always I. Ryan Walters is the same way. Everything he does is to boost himself and not help the students in his state. And I worry that college admissions counselors are going to start looking at applications from students in Oklahoma and say, you know what? I don't think you know enough history because you're in the state where they use the Bible to teach you history. So we're just not going to accept you. That's my fear. I think that's going to happen to some of these students. And if he is allowed to get away with this and spend millions of taxpayer dollars buying the Trump Bible, like, educators, all four educators who don't want them, don't need them, and just didn't ask for them, they would all be better off taking the Bible, throwing it in the trash the second they receive them, because they already can reference the Bible if they need to. No one is going to convince good teachers that using the Trump Bible is the best way to teach American history. So, I said this before, but in a state full of Republican embarrassments, Ryan Walters is the undisputed king. And this week, he's just proving once again how bad he is at his job. All right, I'm going to stop there for now. What are we getting to in terms of questions here? That's what I think. It'll just be the children of Oklahoma donating to a candidate that wants to shut down the Department of Education. I mean, Donald Trump said that literally today, that he wants to cut the Department of Education's budget in half. And that's separate from his previous comments where he just wants to abolish the Department of Education altogether. I think J.D. Vance said that as well. And what are all these again, Ryan Walters, your job is to take the taxpayer money and use it to help students. And he's not doing that either. In fact, he wants to give a cut of that money to Trump, who also hates public education. It's a horrible mix here. I demand every holy book of every religion ever be purchased in equal quantities. And that's what's, I want to laugh at that. The problem with that is what Ryan Walters has argued is we don't need to do that. This isn't a all religions go sort of thing, because his argument is that Christianity and the Bible specifically plays a unique role in American history. That's why he wants the KJV Bible in every classroom, basically, and he's not making an argument that we need to have, equal treatment of other religions, because, the Quran was not vital for American history, just the Bible. So that's his argument. This is historically accurate, he says. It's not about religious freedom or religious equality or anything like that. Do these people think they're invisible when they do this shit? I wondered about that. Like, did Ryan Walters think he could just post this on the website and no one would notice? Or did he know that everyone would notice and he wouldn't care? Because, again, all of it helps Trump make more money. And he totally wants Donald Trump to know he's trying to make Donald Trump more money, because that's the only way to get on his good side. Either way, it's not great. To be fair, Oklahoma Watch sounds like voyeurs for sticky Bible pages. They are awesome reporters. Their article was actually picked up by The Oklahoman which got it to a wider audience, but just fantastic reporting. And I love the fact that they contacted that Christian publisher, the bookstore, and they're like, "How many Bibles you got?" And they're like, "Thousands." They're like, "Do any of them fit this requirement list?" Nope. It's like, that's a great detail to add. That's important to know. Walters will see none of those Bibles if he gets this way because Trump won't deliver. Here's the thing though, Trump's has nothing to do with those Bibles. He just gets a cut of them because he held it up and said, "Buy this." But a different company is making the books. I assume they've already made them and they're sitting in a warehouse, like I said. All Trump gets to do is just like he did with Trump University with his buildings, he stamps his name on them and he has nothing to do with any of it otherwise. He just thinks putting his name on it makes people want to buy it. And Ryan Walters is dumb enough to fall for that. There was a special report on local Fox News about Walters tonight. Not surprised. I assume it's about this. Or maybe he got arrested and I didn't know. Walters refuses to release funds for emergency inhalers for public schools. This is true. And this is one of the reasons I talked about this in a previous video. This is one of the reasons that Republicans in the state want him investigated because he was allocated money to provide inhalers and like special equipment to use with inhalers to public schools. And this is life-saving equipment, and he hasn't done it. He's just hoarding the money right now. His office is, and they're making up excuses for why they couldn't purchase what they needed to purchase. But there's a whole bunch of these things where this has nothing to do with church state separation. He's just bad at his job, or he's purposely not willing to do his job for whatever reason. Like, he's just a bad dude. How do I read and talk? Some would say I do neither well, so I'll challenge that. I don't know. I'm just here talking. I have Den's help. That's how it goes. Can you please do an exposing video on geeks and gamers? I have no idea what you're talking about. Send me whatever via email, and I'm curious. I don't feel like I know enough about games to have anything useful to say about it, but I'm curious what you're talking about. All right, sign up to get early articles. I already wrote one up for next week that I was going to share it with you tonight, and then I'm like, there's too much happening tonight, so I'm going to skip it for now. But I'll get to it next week. But you'll see it tomorrow. You'll see it by Monday soon. Okay, I'm going to pull up the next story, and give me 1 second here. Closing all the tabs. It feels good to click X on Ryan Walters' face. I'm just saying. This is a little bit of a silly story, but I don't know. I was amused, so let's talk about it. So last week, the editor of Mother Jones magazine, which is a fantastic left-leaning progressive magazine, her name is Clara Jeffrey, she tweeted something that was absurd. I like her otherwise, but she tweeted something that was really silly, and I want to show it to you, and then we can have a discussion all about it. This is what she tweeted last week. It has since been deleted, but here we go. Creeping Christian nationalism alert. Alaska Air flight attendant just wished us a blessed night as we landed in San Francisco, to groans. Other adjectives that would have sufficed. Great, awesome, fabulous, amazing, fantastic. As my roommate said, this ain't Montgomery, sweetie. So she was on a flight to San Francisco. She landed, and when the flight attendant was like, all right, everyone, have a good night, the flight attendant said, have a blessed night. And this person got very, very mad about it. And the whole airline groaned. It's like Trump saying they all had tears in their eyes. Yeah, I'm sure they all cared. So it's a weird thing to tweet for a couple reasons. One, I don't know. I'm an atheist. I would notice if someone said, have a blessed day, have a blessed night. Like, my ears would ring for like a second, and then it'd be like, whatever. Not what I prefer you to say, but whatever. It's like going to a mall and having someone say Merry Christmas to you. Do I wish they would have said like Happy Holidays? Maybe. But more likely, I'm just like, all right, Merry Christmas to you too. I don't think about it that much. It's just not a thing I'm going to waste any energy being mad about. Why would I get mad about it? It's a knee-jerk response for some people. But the bigger issue here is the very first thing she said, that this is creeping Christian nationalism. And listen, I cover Christian nationalism all the time. I'm not pretending I'm an expert on it, but what is Christian nationalism? Christian nationalism, however you want to define it, I guess, is basically when people think our nation was founded on a specific type of Christianity, and therefore that the government has an obligation to pass laws in accordance with those conservative Christian beliefs. So Ryan Walters trying to get a KJV Bible in every classroom, that's Christian nationalism. Donald Trump saying like we need to, privilege Christians in the government or whatever, that's Christian nationalism. Someone saying have a blessed night when you're getting off a flight, that is not even close to Christian nationalism. That's just someone trying to be polite and get you the hell off their plane so that they can just get on with their job. It's not that big a deal. It's not even a skirmish in the culture war. It's just someone doing her damn job. All you're supposed to do in that situation is say thanks, bye, or just walk off the plane and say nothing. Grab your carry-on and leave, move on with your life. That's all you do. Now, one piece of consolation to this is that it looked like even liberals were like, the hell are you talking about? And a bunch of people began offering their thoughts on this. And again, her tweet is deleted, but this is Tim Alberta, who has written about being a former evangelical and how disturbed he is by what it is now. Not here for the pile-on, just want to highlight the danger that Professor Samuel Perry and Andrew Whitehead and others have spoken about. Those are two experts on Christian nationalism. When we deploy Christian nationalism with such cartoonish imprecision that Americans become desensitized to a real threat. And that's true. When you say everything is Christian nationalism, nothing is Christian nationalism. And that's a problem because Christian nationalism is a very real thing that we ought to be concerned about. So don't call everything that because it's not. Not everything is persecution. Not everything is like cancel culture. Like, stick to what it actually is. Not everything is woke. For what it's worth, in my experience, the Venn diagram between people who wish you a blessed day and people who advocate a theocratic takeover of our governing institutions is non-existent. Fair point. There were a couple other messages that I thought were really interesting. This is from one person. As a longtime Mother Jones reader, this tweet from its EIC is embarrassing. At their best, Mother Jones does some of the best investigative reporting out there. At their worst, they come across as the archetypal smug liberals looking down their noses at the vulgarity of the lower classes. And that's the thing. Like, stop pretending like what this flight attendant did was a big deal. It's not. And by saying it is, it's basically dismissing a whole bunch of potential readers that you want to reach. This is from Sam Perry, one of those Christian nationalist experts, who said two kinds of events drive Google searches for Christian nationalism. The first is right-wing politicians openly embracing the label. The second is lefty media people misapplying the label to normal, innocuous Christian stuff. And both of them drive more searches than January 6th did, which is depressing. Basically, even the king of Christian nationalism, in terms of being an expert on it, is like, that ain't it. I appreciated this comment as well. I'm an atheist who regularly advocates about the dangers of Christian nationalism. Someone saying to have a blessed night is at the bottom of my concerns. Yup, right on. I also found this interesting. You know who's said the word blessed a whole bunch? This person named Clara Jeffrey, who has said repeatedly, San Francisco is blessed with mostly temperate weather. The Bay Area has been blessed with some great public health officials, blessed to have a kid, whatever. All that's fine. Does anyone think she's religious when she says that? No, it's just a word you use. And I get that context matters, but even in the flight attendant's case, we don't necessarily know what the tone of it was. There's a difference between, thanks for flying with Alaska Airlines, have a blessed day, and like, have a blessed day or something like that. Like, I don't know how she said it. I'm guessing it was the former. It's not that big of a deal. One other thing I would mention here. is that if you actually want to be upset at Alaska Airlines about anything, you know what you should be upset about? This is what they actually used to do on their airlines. They used to give you a tray full of food on long flights that said things like this. They used to give you Bible cards with your meal. That's a very real thing that this entire airline used to do. Just random Bible verses along with your shitty dinner. And you know when they stopped putting prayer cards in your meals? And some of you are like, I didn't know they serve meals on airplanes. It's true. They didn't do this, by the way, to convert passengers. They did it because they thought it was good marketing. And so they did it in like the 70s and it was popular. And then they go out of style. It wasn't until 2006 that they stopped doing it. Here's an article from the Seattle Times. Again, look at the date here. This is January 25th, 2012. But basically, Alaska Airlines stopped doing this in 2006, and they only were giving them out to like first class passengers on long distance flights, mostly because those are the only ones that got food on trays, unlike, the peasants who get a little bag of peanuts or something. And then by 2012, they were gone entirely. And why were they gone? What did they say? Check this out. This difficult decision was not made lightly, Alaska Air Group CEO said, and the president said. Some of you enjoy the cards and associate them with our service. At the same time, we've heard from many of you who believe religion is inappropriate on an airplane. So then they stopped in 2012. But that would at least be a little closer to Christian nationalism. It actually isn't. It doesn't fit the bill at all. But that's a bigger concern in terms of Christianity taking over someone's life than someone saying, have a blessed day. I will also point out that a writer I really respect, Chrissy Stroop, has written an article on the website Religion Dispatches, basically taking me to task on everything I just told you here, saying it is a big, even if it's not Christian nationalism, a flight attendant saying have a blessed day is a big deal. It's not innocuous. And to try to give you the best version of Chrissy's argument, I think my takeaway from the article is that it is definitely a form of Christian privilege, which I think is accurate. Like, you can say have a blessed day because everyone's used to that language, just like you could say Merry Christmas and everyone's just kind of used to that. And I agree with that. It is a form of Christian privilege. I'm just saying it's a form of Christian privilege that's so universal, at least in the US, that in terms of what I'm going to get angry about, that one's not high on the list. That's my concern about that. Chrissy also brought up if this person said something with an Islamic flavor to it, assalamu alaikum, something like that. I probably said it wrong. But if they said something representing another religion, everyone would have noticed. It would have been a bigger story. And I also think that's true. But I think for a lot of people, saying have a blessed day, have a blessed night, they don't really see that as a religious thing. It's just something they say. I think I have also heard from someone who said, blessed is also a word pagans use. We don't know. Maybe this lady's pagan and she's like, we're all in San Francisco now. Who knows? So again, context matters. I don't know why Clara Jeffrey deleted that tweet. I hope it's just because she realized it was dumb and not because she didn't want to hear all the criticism. But there you go. I'll stop there with that story. What other questions we got here? My rural community says blessed or namaste. A lot of things. Don't care. Do they really say namaste? I'm surprised by that. Outside of a yoga studio, maybe I'm surprised. But again, yeah, I've heard it in certain contexts, and I don't know, I've gotten over worrying about that. Just like when someone says bless you after I sneeze or something, I'm going to assume you don't mean it in a religious way, and I'm not going to spend any time thinking about it. A lot of drama junkies adding drama where there is none. Right? Come on, you're on a plane. Just get off and go to wherever it is you're going. It's San Francisco. It's awesome. There's cool places to go. Don't worry about what that lady said to you. Why do we bless someone when they sneeze, but excuse ourselves when we cough or fart? That's a good point. I want all of you, if you ever hear someone fart, to say bless you and just see what happens. It'll be fun. Oh, thanks for that donation. Christianity was my favorite religion. You'd get a plate full of money every Sunday. Wow. Amen. Talk about filled with the Holy Spirit. But I learned quickly, do not get between a pastor and his money. I forgot if we have a story on pastors and money today, but soon. Thank you so much for that, Guitar Dog. All right, like and subscribe. Give me 1 second here. I gave you a happy story so I could tell you a very disturbing story afterwards, of course, just to balance everything out here. So give me one moment. Goodbye to all that. Um, okay. This is what I want to share with you here. One moment. Okay. I wanted to talk to you about a lawsuit that was filed in the state of California this week. They actually had a press conference, and the guy right here, that's Rob Bonta. That's the Attorney General of California. And this lady at the podium is Anna Nusslock. And I'm going to tell you Anna's story because I'm not going to read to you from the lawsuit because it's long and it gets complicated, but it is disturbing. But you should know what she went through and why she is suing uh, filing a lawsuit in the state of California and why she has the attorney general's help. So, again, it is disturbing, but here you go. According to this lawsuit, back in February of this year, Anna was rushed to a hospital because she was pregnant. She was only 15 weeks pregnant, and she was at home and her water broke, which is way too early for water to break. She was pregnant with twins. The water broke. This wasn't good. She had to get to a hospital. And so she was rushed to like the nearest hospital. As far as the lawsuit said, she was in pain, she was bleeding, and all the tests at the hospital basically confirmed her worst fears, which is that the twins she was carrying were not going to survive. I believe one of the fetuses was already gone. The other one had a heartbeat, but it was as good as gone. It wasn't going to make it no matter what they did. So all of that is tragic. It happens. Miscarriages happen. Something like this does happen. And it's sad. And that's more than enough tragedy for any one family to have to deal with. But the hospital decided to make everything worse. And this is where it gets even more disturbing because the focus at that point needed to be on helping Anna because, according to the suit, she was at increased risk of serious complications with every minute that passed. Because now you have these dying fetuses inside of you, and it actually poses a health risk to you if you don't get them out of your system. So she needed to remove those fetuses from her body to avoid immediate health problems, like the possibility of infection was really high. And also, you had to remove them from your system in order to protect the ability to have kids later on. I believe she's in her 40s. This was already a high risk pregnancy. But if she wanted any chance of having kids in the future, they needed to take action really quickly to make sure she's safe. So, the normal way to handle this situation would have been a medical abortion. Let's get these fetuses out of your system now. They're not going to make it. We just need to make sure you're safe. Unfortunately, the hospital she was at was Providence St. Joseph Hospital in the city of Eureka, California, and that's a Catholic hospital. And they don't do abortions for any reason. And this is a part of the lawsuit I wanted to share with you because this was troubling. They basically told her, you have a couple of options. I'll show this to you in a second. Um, the doctor there at the Catholic hospital said there is still a detectable heartbeat in one of the fetuses, which is why they couldn't help her, because then it would have been an abortion they can't deal with. The other option, if not doing an abortion, is we can wait for your health to get even worse, because if you're really close to dying, then that overrides the abortion rule and then we can help you, but you're not quite dead yet, is basically what they told her. So at this point, like even the doctors at the hospital who know better than the Catholic bishops who write the rules about how the hospital operates, the doctors were like, wait, there is another option because we know you need help. You can be airlifted to a hospital several hours away that specializes in high risk pregnancy. But Anna heard that option. And she's like, they could take me to a real hospital, like a secular hospital, hours away. But if I get airlifted, and because this is America, if I get airlifted, it's going to like lead to a cost of tens of thousands of dollars, maybe like $40,000. And she knew her insurance would not cover that cost. Another downside to the helicopter taking her to the other hospital is that her husband would not be able to be in the helicopter with her for like space reasons. So she would have to do it alone. And she didn't want to do that for obvious reasons. So that took out the getting airlifted to another place. She asked the Catholic hospital, can I drive there? Can I drive to this other hospital? And the doctor said, if you try to drive the 5 hours, you will hemorrhage and die before you get to a place that can help you. So driving herself was not an option. So then a doctor came up with a different solution. They said, you know what? There's another hospital that's about 20 minutes away. They don't specialize in high risk pregnancies, but basically, like, it's a secular hospital. You can probably get what you need, maybe, and it's only 20 minutes away. So she's like, all right, well, should I take an ambulance there? And she said, I'm not going to take an ambulance because, again, America, my insurance is not going to pay for an ambulance to take me 20 minutes. So she said, I'll drive myself to the hospital. And guess what the hospital did then? Check this line out in the lawsuit. Number 3, instead of providing the medical care she needed, Providence Hospital offered her a bucket and towels. And I know this is early in the lawsuit, but this is what happens in this part of the story. As Anna was driving the 20 minutes to the nearby hospital, they literally gave her a bucket and towels just in case anything happened on the way there. That's messed up. And by the way, she never should have been discharged because of the situation in which she was in. In a way, she was lucky because that new hospital did have the equipment to give her the care she needed, but it wasn't the best option, like that other hospital's several hours away. And one other thing to note is that when she went to that hospital 20 minutes away, the doctor there said she was actively hemorrhaging when she arrived. Like, they are lucky they got to her when they did. Another thing about that hospital she got to, they did help her. They did save her life. But that same hospital, as of October this month, they are shutting down their labor and delivery services because that happens to a lot of hospitals that are smaller. What would have happened if Anna was in this situation next month as opposed to earlier this year? Then that hospital would no longer be an option for her. She would probably be dead by now. So, in the Attorney General, in his press release, that's exactly what the Attorney General said. Check this out. The next person in Anna's situation will face an agonizing choice of risking a multi-hour drive to another hospital or waiting until they are close enough to death for Providence to intervene. That's from the Attorney General of California. So in a way, she was lucky because she did get the help she needed. But the reason the Attorney General is getting involved is because California has something called the Emergency Services Law. And what that says, it's basically designed to protect people in exactly this situation. It prohibits hospitals from dumping patients off to a different hospital because they don't want to take care of you. And it also requires any hospital with an emergency department, like this Catholic hospital, as long as your emergency room is open to the public, like this one was, they have to provide emergency care for you. They cannot legally send a patient away to avoid performing an abortion, even if they would have the right to do that in non-emergency situations. So California's law said she came to your emergency room, she needed an abortion. That was the right medical care she needed at the time. I don't care what hospital you are, you have an obligation to provide that service. I don't care if you're Catholic, if you're a hospital with an emergency room open to the public, you got to provide emergency care to all those people. And the Catholic hospital refused to do that. And that's why the Attorney General is now getting involved. So in addition to the lawsuit that Anna and the Attorney General, state of California, is now filing against Providence St. Joseph Hospital, The Attorney General's also filing a separate preliminary injunction, basically saying to a court, while lawsuits take time, and while you are dealing with this case, we want you to issue an order saying, hey, Providence, if anything like this happens right now, today, you're going to take care of it. We want you to tell the hospital they got to do this in the immediate future. And separately, we'll deal with Anna's case as a separate thing. Now, what did Providence say about all of this? They're basically trying to deny anything bad happened. This is from the Sacramento Bee. A spokesperson for Providence Health, the hospital's parent company, headquartered in Washington state, said in a statement that Monday morning was the first Providence had heard of the California Attorney General's lawsuit, and we are currently reviewing the filings to understand what is being alleged. Really? I read it in 4 minutes and I figured out what was being alleged. It's not that complicated. You didn't provide care. You are a healthcare facility. Bad. It's not that complicated. And then they declined to comment further. Yeah. They said they're heartbroken by her experience. No, they're not. And then check this out. Providence is deeply committed to the health and wellness of women and pregnant patients and provides emergency services to all who walk through our doors in accordance with state and federal law. And it is friggin' hilarious for any Catholic institution to say, you know what we care about? The health and wellness of women. Because that has never happened in the history of the Catholic anything. The reason we're having this discussion at all is because they literally did not provide the care that Anna needed. So they'll respond in court eventually. But again, like I said, it's not complicated. A patient needed emergency care. That care involved an abortion. Abortion is health care. The Catholic hospital refused to provide health care because it prioritizes almost dead fetuses over living, breathing women. They wanted Anna to suffer even more before they would even consider helping her out. That's how pro-life they are. So pro-life, they were like, maybe you should try dying a little more so that we don't have to do an abortion. Honestly, this isn't even about abortion. This is about whether Catholic hospitals should be required to help patients, period. There's a saying among liberals that abortion is healthcare. And this is a perfect example of that. Anna did not want an abortion. She wanted to have those babies. She could not. She needed an abortion to save her own life. But Catholic Church bishops, like so many anti-abortion activists, have no idea how to distinguish between those two things. And again, this is scary because this is in California. This is obviously and famously a blue state. If a patient can be denied abortion care in California, imagine how much worse this situation would be in Alabama or Mississippi. And this is not just because of the Dobbs decision. This is what happens when the Catholic Church, with its wealth and power, can start gobbling up so many hospitals across the country, which is the thing that is actually happening. Anytime you elevate faith-based rules over medical expertise, patients are going to suffer. If the Catholic Church doesn't want to help patients in tragic situations, then they should get out of the healthcare business immediately. Okay, I'm going to stop there with that story. I hate that story. Happy to take questions, though. Oh, thank you for that super sticker. I appreciate that. Providence is such an ironic name in this case. All the Catholic hospitals, they always have those weird names like Dignity. It's like, there's no dignity here when you're doing stuff like this. Just call it Catholic Hospital. We all know what it means. Stop trying to hide behind an ostensibly secular name. What else we got? If this happened in Alabama or Mississippi, she would have no support for her claim. Yeah, they would absolutely not be fighting this battle against the Catholic hospital in any red state. Catholic hospitals just shouldn't exist, full stop. Or if they exist, make sure there are enough secular hospitals nearby. If people want to go to a Catholic hospital, I don't know why, but if they want to, fine. But that's a problem when Catholic hospitals are taking over regional hospitals, leaving patients with no other option. And I'm going to have another story on this soon. And I think this comment will apply even more then. Too many horror stories. How many horror stories do we not hear about? No kidding, right? With all the abortion stories, the ones we've heard about a woman, I forgot which state, Alabama maybe, or Arkansas, who died because she didn't get the care she needed. How many of those stories do you not hear about? And then, some people have the courage, like Anna in this story, to speak out and actually be the public face of this lawsuit. Incredible courage in the face of the personal tragedy she suffered. All right, turn on those notifications. Sign up for the newsletter. I'm gonna go to a happier story, just again, so it's not all depressing all the time. Give me 1 second here. All right. This story is also about Catholic hospitals, but I swear this one has a happier ending because Colorado, with its blue legislature and Democratic governor, have done something really remarkable when it comes to Catholic hospitals. But in order to understand what they just did, I'm going to give you a little bit of a primer on how Catholic hospitals work because you're already familiar with how they won't perform abortions. What you may not know is all the other stuff they don't do. Okay. Here's one example. They don't provide tubal ligations, they won't tie your tubes, and they won't do vasectomies. And this is interesting because when would you get your tubes tied? That's not always just some elective procedure you do whenever you feel like it. If suppose you're giving birth and you have a C-section, you may decide you're done having kids, you want your tubes tied so there are no unplanned pregnancies in the future. The thing is, the doctor's already there performing surgery for the C-section, and actually performing a tubal ligation lets you kill two birds with one stone. Like, it's a safe procedure. Medical professionals even say that if you want to get your tubes tied, do it during the C-section. That's good because you don't need another surgery. In fact, nearly 30% of married adult women in the US have had that procedure done. So, not a big deal at all. But a Catholic hospital will not do that. Even if they're performing a C-section, they won't allow the doctors to do it because their directives don't come from medical professionals, but from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, a conservative group that sets the policies for all these Catholic hospitals. And famously, the Catholic Church opposes contraception. No condoms, no birth control. Getting your tubes tied, getting a vasectomy, they won't allow that either. So even a normal procedure like tubal ligation would not be permitted in a Catholic hospital, even if future pregnancies would put that woman's life in danger. Okay, so that's just one example of what they don't do. What else do they not do? What happens if you have an ectopic pregnancy? That is a situation where a woman could die very quickly, and an abortion is the fastest way to help the woman in that case. Most hospitals would give that woman a drug to induce an abortion, or they would just remove that fertilized egg through surgery. Not at a Catholic hospital. They might make doctors remove the entire fallopian tube just to prevent something fatal from happening to the implanted egg, basically reducing her ability almost entirely to get pregnant in the future. Is that medically necessary to remove the whole fallopian tube? No, but that's what their faith tells them they're allowed to do. What if a woman has a miscarriage? Already emotionally draining. I just told you in the previous story, normal hospitals would induce an abortion to make sure all that embryonic tissue is removed from her body because we don't want an infection. But you just heard me say at a Catholic hospital, they don't allow such a thing. They have to wait for the woman to be infected or almost dying before they'll do anything about it. I mentioned contraception. If a victim of sexual assault needs birth control immediately in an emergency situation, Catholic hospitals will not provide it for her. And if there's any chance the victim is already pregnant by the time the hospital sees her, that help is even less likely. What else? They're not going to help you with the sperm donor if you want to get pregnant that way. They're not going to let you use a surrogate mother to give birth to your biological child because that would be gravely immoral. What happens if you're elderly? What happens if you're constantly in pain, dying of a terminal disease, and you want to end life on your own terms? Some states, including Colorado, let you make those kinds of decisions. But if you're at a Catholic hospital, too damn bad. They just want you to keep suffering. They don't care how much pain you're in. Obviously, Catholic hospitals are not going to help you if you're a trans person who wants hormone treatment, a hysterectomy, a mastectomy, anything like that. The point is, Catholic hospitals have an obligation to the church, not their patients. They care about dogma, not medicine. And the people they tend to hurt are the ones that typically have the fewest options about where to go for a procedure. Low income people, women, LGBTQ individuals, people who don't get to decide where they go because their options are restricted for some reason or another. Maybe they don't have insurance. Maybe they don't know about these restrictions in advance. Even if they have insurance, it's possible their policies require them to go to a hospital. And if that happens, their options are really limited. And again, if we were talking about a handful of hospitals, maybe not a huge deal. But as I've said, Catholic hospitals are gobbling up hospitals across the country. 4 of the 10 largest healthcare systems in the United States are now affiliated with the Catholic Church. They are taking over hospitals everywhere. 30% of births in the US now happen at a Catholic hospital. Okay, here's what's really disturbing beyond all that. Here's what is also disturbing about all this. You know how evangelical Christian bakers or florists, they don't put a sign on their door that says, "We don't want your money if you're gay. We're not going to service you if you come here, if you want like a gay cake," or whatever they want to call it. They don't advertise their bigotry. They wait until you order and then they tell you what the deal is. Well, these hospitals are the same way. If the hospital's name is like Providence or Dignity, you may not even know they are Catholic because they're like hiding behind the name. Several years ago, the New York Times actually looked at the websites for hundreds and hundreds of Catholic hospitals. I'm going to share this with you. This is from 2018. Again, check this out. The New York Times analyzed 652 websites of Catholic hospitals in the US using a list maintained by the Catholic Health Association. On nearly 2/3 of them, it took more than 3 clicks from the homepage to determine that the hospital was Catholic. They didn't advertise it on the homepage or a page or two away from it. Only 17 individual Catholic hospital websites, fewer than 3%, contained an easily found list of services not offered for religious reasons. And all of them were in Washington state, which requires that such information be published on a hospital site. Everywhere else, those lists are maybe posted somewhere else, a corporate parent site. They're hard to find, whatever. So the point is, these hospitals do not want to tell you they're Catholic, and they really don't want to tell you what procedures they will not do. Because if you find out, if you were thinking like, I want to go to a Mexican restaurant, and the Mexican restaurant is like, sure, but we're not going to serve you anything with like lettuce or cheese. They don't want you to know that up front. You're not going to go there. They're going to wait till you come there, make your order, and then say, sorry, we don't do that. Do you want something else? So that you can still get some business out of the customer. These Catholic hospitals do not want to tell you what they won't do, because then you might choose a better option. So that's very disturbing as well. Okay, so that brings me to what's actually happening now in Colorado. Because last year, a couple of state reps and one state senator, they sponsored a bill, technically known as House Bill 1218, and it was called the Patients' Right to Know Act. And this bill required all hospitals in the state of Colorado, as well as community clinics, to post detailed lists of what procedures are not generally available or that are subject to significant restriction for non-medical reasons. Basically, they said, we want to create a database of what you provide, what's on your menu. You have to tell us. And doctors would also be encouraged to share that information with patients. And, to get to the nitty gritty of the bill said our state's Department of Public Health and Environment is going to create a form that all these hospitals have to fill out. And then we're going to publish all those forms on our website, updated every 2 years, and will investigate any complaints regarding non-compliance. So the hospitals don't have to share the information on their websites, but the state of Colorado is going to share the information on its website. In terms of the cost of this bill, The legislators said we need about $80,000, which is nothing in a budget. We need $80,000 to pay someone part-time to just collect all the papers and put it up on the website. So, like, this is a not expensive bill at all. And as we know, Catholic hospitals are not going to do this on their own. You have to force them to do it. Anyway, American Atheists, they actually promoted legislation like this for years. In fact, in 2015, they actually wrote up a bill, a draft version of this legislation. And they were like, hey, lawmakers, if you want to file this in your states, we already did the work for you. Just go submit it and make it a reality. Because letting patients make fully informed decisions about their healthcare, that's a good thing. That's good for the citizens of your state. It's especially good in an increasingly complicated and increasingly religious healthcare marketplace. And in fact, when they were debating this bill in Colorado, American Atheists Vice President for Legal and Policy, Allison Gill, was there making an argument for why they needed to pass this. And the good news is they did pass this bill in Colorado. They did it last year. I'm sorry, they passed it this past year, and Governor Jared Polis signed it into law this past May. And now I'm happy to tell you this is actually a reality. This week, it just went live. Colorado's Department of Public Health and Environment, there is now the Health Facility Service Availability page. And if you go down here, you could see a list of every health care facility in the state, and you can glance at their forms because they have already been submitted, and the person they hired to put it all up on the website has done the job. I'll give you an example of what's on there. This is what I'm about to show you is a screenshot of like an example here. So this is a page that says, do you offer pregnancy testing, support, and termination services? And this is a random secular hospital, but check this out. I'm going to go like, do you provide on the upper left pregnancy testing, genetic testing? This place said, yes, we do. And also we would refer you to another hospital if we need to. Go down the list. Do you provide medication abortions? And they said, we're limited in what we can do, but we will refer you to another hospital. We just don't have that ability at our facility to do that. What about an actual surgical abortion? They also said, we're limited, but we will refer you elsewhere. Going down, induction of labor after fetal demise. Yes, we take care of that. We will also refer you. That's fine. Let me show you a Catholic hospital's form. And this is now up on Colorado's website. Do you do genetic testing? No, we don't. But we will refer you elsewhere. Do you do, let me scroll down to the medication abortion. Nope, we don't do it. Surgical abortion? Nope, we don't do it. Would you refer patients to another place? No, we will not. They have N's in the referral column. Like, not only are they not going to do it, they're not going to tell you where you can get help because they don't want to help you get an abortion. So this is all public now. Anyone can go through the Colorado, on the website on Colorado's page here, and you could see any hospital, clinic. You could look by your city. You could sort by city. And you could see, like, wherever you live, you could check out the places that are near you, and you could see what they offer. And that is a useful service. I know most people don't even know it's there. I know they probably won't think about clicking on it because, again, if you're going to a hospital, it's probably not like you're picking a hotel for a vacation. You're not sitting there exploring your options. But on the off chance you're curious what's in your community, you can now do that and find out what they will do and won't do, which, again, that is important for the sake of transparency, right? American Atheist said in a statement, this is from Cheryl Calavrusis, who is the co-chair of their Colorado Secular Advocacy Team. She said, this law will protect all Coloradans, but it's especially important for our state's most vulnerable populations, those who are harmed the most by denial of care, including women, LGBTQ folks, and people who live in rural areas. Nick Fish, the president of American Atheists, added, our work isn't done, though. In too many places, the law still allows for non-medical denial of care, so we're going to continue advocating for transparency legislation and patients' right to know policies across the country. And I love that they're doing that. as he alluded to, this was never an anti-religious bill. This is not against the Catholic Church. This is about transparency, not religious persecution. If a faith-based hospital doesn't want to offer certain services, nothing in this law says they have to violate their religious beliefs. No one's making them do the things they don't want to do. It just says, hey, you should tell the public the whole truth about what you offer, which should not be asking much. I mean, it's long overdue. I just hope other states, in addition to Washington and Colorado, now imitate what they just did in Colorado, because fantastic law went into effect on October 1st. So glad it's out there. I hope others copy it. I'm going to pause there for this story. Let's see if there are any other questions here. Or if they receive Medicare funding or any other federal funding, then they should be required to provide care even if they don't like it. That's true. And I don't know the specifics of how that would work. But yeah, if you're getting any sort of taxpayer funding for what you do in your hospital, you should have an obligation to at least be transparent, much less provide whatever care is needed for those patients. I have to presume that the Catholics are taking over hospitals for financial reasons, huh? I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here, because they're definitely not doing it because they care about patients' well being. Because if they did, there are way too many patients who suffer at Catholic hospitals. And again, there are some places, like, the reason they are able to take over is because rural health facilities, a lot of hospitals, just aren't profitable. And so if a Catholic hospital comes and says, we want to buy you out, that's a tempting offer. I don't necessarily blame the hospitals for doing it, even though it's like a selfish move. But again, this goes back to, I hate American healthcare. It's sad that profit has to come into the picture here. Every other country does it so much better. But unfortunately, we have to compete against the Catholic Church, which has all the money in the world, but provides not nearly the amount of care as like a good hospital would. What other questions we got here? Anything else? 1 second. Not to be crass, but Fetal Demise should be the name of a metal band. You get on that one, I'll come to your show. No, I won't. But still, politics and religion should have never been allowed to dictate medical care of women. I mean, isn't that the Kamala Harris message at this point? Like, we want to help you. Donald Trump does not. If he becomes president again, and if Republicans have the option and they have the numbers to pass bills regarding this, religion's going to start dictating what services are offered. Maybe they won't even say it's religious, but whatever religious people, conservative Christians, don't want, they're not going to offer anymore. Like, there is a very real danger for the election. By the way, for those of you who haven't done it, I just voted by mail. It's in the post, it's in the mailbox already. I'm done voting. It was easy. I know it's safe. As of like maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I can go online and see if they got my ballot and it's already like been processed, waiting to be tallied. It was so easy to do. Go do that if you haven't already. Don't, as tempting as it is to vote on election day. And I remember I did that in 2016 because I was excited to vote that day for Hillary Clinton. So I waited till election day, never doing that again. I'm done voting. I don't have to think about it. If there's some weather issue on November 5th, like, who cares? Doesn't affect me at all because I've already voted. Go get your ballot in the bank already. Like, if you haven't requested your mail-in ballot, go do it now from whatever state you're in. You can do that. It's so easy. It was so fast. Like, go get it done. Aw, thank you. Thinking, rational, kind. Eh, maybe one of those three. I don't know about thinking. I don't know about kind. We'll see. Thank you, David, for that donation. Having your podcast keeps me sane and makes me want to be a better and more intellectual person. What is your favorite dinosaur? Ooh. Stegosaurus is the first one that comes to mind. I have not thought about them very much. I feel like all the dinosaurs I know are because my child will make mention of them. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Let's get to a serious story that actually, this is actually a happy story as well, but let's talk about this. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Do you all remember LifeWise Academy? That is the Christian ministry that I think is based in Ohio, but it's really popular in Ohio. And basically, what LifeWise Academy does is a lot of states, they allow students to leave class. A lot of public school districts allow students to leave school during the day for a certain portion of the day to get religious instruction. Like a bus can pick them up, take them to church. They get Bible class for like half an hour, and then the bus brings them back to school. And it's totally legal in a bunch of states, and they all have policies that say, yeah, you can do that if you want. And in Ohio specifically, the rules say there are some rules on what can be done here. It's called released time. Students can have access to release time. Any organization can offer classes during that time. Parents have to sign a permission slip opting in to let their kid participate. The public schools have nothing to do with them. They don't fund them. They don't promote them, at least in theory. So what happens is that a church might say, we'll provide Bible lessons for kids. Permission slips will go out. And if parents turn them in, the church may say, all right, the bus will be outside the school at, I don't know, 12:30. Kids can come on. They go away. Half an hour later, the bus brings them back and the kids are off to class. Now, the rules in one particular school district that I'm going to talk about in Ohio said you're not allowed to leave during like your core classes, your English, your math, your history. You're only allowed to miss like certain elective classes. And that's what has started to happen. Okay. So, LifeWise, let me show you this. This is the LifeWise website. This is the front page. This is like the top of the page. Every week, tens of thousands of public school students legally attend LifeWise Bible classes during school hours. And it is legal. And what LifeWise does is they say, look, not every church needs to reinvent the wheel here. And you don't need to start from scratch. We have the lessons, we have the curriculum, we have the instructors, we got the buses, and we'll take care of everything. What your church needs to do is pay us to use our material, like get into our system, and then your church deals with your local school district, and you can basically purchase like a subscription to LifeWise, and they'll take care of everything from there. That's why LifeWise has become so popular in Ohio, because all these big churches are like, we want to offer Bible classes in our local school district. Can we get LifeWise to do it? And they pay a fee, and all the material is at their disposal, and also all the transportation is taken care of, and it makes it very easy for churches to tap into their system. Okay, so that's what LifeWise does. I've made videos about LifeWise in the past, and like they said on their website, it is legal because the school's not promoting it. The school's just saying kids are allowed to leave campus for religious instruction if their parents are cool with it. Okay. So it is legal because it's not promoted by the school district. I have read articles over the past year that have said, this is from NBC News, LifeWise now has chapters in more than 300 schools in a dozen states, and they reach 35,000 students. I saw a different article in July that said it was up to 525 schools in 23 states. So LifeWise is growing quickly. And like they say, it is legal. But even if it's legal, this is very much a Christian nationalist dream come true. Because even though the schools, the policies say you can leave the building for religious instruction, who has the resources to do all this? Well, conservative Christian churches that want to pay LifeWise. They have the resources for this. But like some local random liberal church, they barely have money to pay for a pastor. You think they have money to put all this shit together? Not a chance. Much less Islamic mosques, much less a satanic temple group that wants to do this on their own. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's a lot harder to get off the ground. And then you got to find out, is anyone even going to take these classes that we're offering? So that's the deal with LifeWise. And there are reasons to criticize them too. Sometimes local school districts do end up promoting them, and that's a separate issue. Sometimes LifeWise hosts assemblies in the schools. That's a problem, but whatever. Let's assume everything is above board and legal. It's still a problem. And this is what happened in the town of Westerville. Because in the Westerville, Ohio school district, they've they have a lot of students who participated in this. I think last year they said they had 300 kids who were part of a LifeWise program. And think about what that means. That means in the middle of the day, you have 300 students leaving the school. And that means the public school is responsible for knowing who's coming in and out of the building. They need staff to be like, okay, you're leaving and now you're checked back in because we're responsible for you during the school day. That's a lot of public school time dedicated to getting kids in and out the door. Even besides that, release time makes life harder for teachers who teach those elective classes. Because, first of all, by saying you're allowed to leave campus during elective time, you're basically saying math and reading matter, but like art and gym don't. Which, I mean, what does that say to a teacher or like the non STEM classes? That's messed up. It also, let's say it's a class where you need all the students to be there. If half the class leaves to get religious instruction, a teacher cannot really teach because, the next day, if those kids are back in class, you can't move on to the next section. Half the class doesn't know what you're doing and they're not going to catch up on their own. So you got to reteach all the material. Like, that's why teachers hate field trips because you got to just redo everything the next day for all the kids who missed. It's annoying. And then there's the peer pressure. If your friends are taking the Bible class and getting prizes and candy when they are at a church, you're going to want to go to, and you're going to ask your parents for permission. And I know Christians love that. I know churches love that peer pressure, but it means who's left behind? Who's not going to be involved in these classes? Families who are religious minorities, Christians who don't want to participate in the charade. Like, it's not hard to imagine a public school where at some point in the day, the only kids in the class are like the children of Muslim and Jewish parents. And that's it, because all the Christians have gone off to church in the middle of the day. So the Westerville City Schools in Ohio, since 2009, they have had a released time policy that lets students skip class to go to this religious instruction. But a couple weeks ago, they had a meeting, a school board meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about how disruptive all these absences were becoming. And let me show you an article from a local news site about all this. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Here we go. This is from WBNS, the local CBS affiliate. I have significant concerns about distraction caused by pulling kids out of school during the middle of the day, said Westerville City School Board member Christy Meyer. LifeWise said it had about 300 students from Westerville in the program last year. This year, so far, 120 students have signed up. Meyer said she worries about the strain of resources for various programs. The potential strain on our resources with multiple programs operating like during the school day, ensuring legal compliance and managing logistics of kids going and coming requires significant staff and resources. So, legitimate concern. This has nothing to do with Christianity or the Bible. She's just saying when you have that many kids skipping school in the middle of the day for any reason, it's a logistical nightmare. Who's responsible for those kids? That becomes a problem. And it just creates chaos everywhere. And she's not wrong to say any of that. All right. So, very good reason to be concerned about all this. Like, another thing to point out is that if released time is supposed to be its own distinct thing and it has nothing to do with the public school system not using any resources, and yet what Meyer was saying is that no, this program's very much putting a strain on our resources because we have to deal with all these kids coming and going. Now, there's no legal way to say no more LifeWise. They can't do that. That would be religious discrimination. The only alternative they had is saying, why don't we just get rid of released time altogether? Because Ohio state law says public school districts may offer released time in their districts. It does not say they shall. They may. It's optional. So the only options on the table in Westerville are let the program continue or get rid of release time altogether. That's the only neutral way to do it. One of the people who said that, who was in support of that, her name was Jacqueline Fraley. Check out what she said during a school board meeting. On the other side, Jacqueline Fraley is with parents against religious instruction policies. Fraley agrees with the board members who want to get rid of the policy. We're not against LifeWise. We're against children leaving school, said Fraley. My family has very deep religious convictions, very deep faith, but we make sure that our daughter learns our religion, learns our faith at home. So it's like, look, I'm a Christian. This isn't anti-Christian. I'm going to teach my kids about religion at home. Why can't you do the same thing? Did you all know churches are available on Sundays? They're open and everything. Or after school. After school's an option. You have the rest of the weekend. You can use any time to teach your kids about religion. You don't have to do it in the middle of the school day. By the way, Fraley, the woman I just mentioned, she also raised other concerns a couple of weeks ago. She said students are feeling excluded. People like her are getting bullied by Christians who think she's persecuting them. And she said that as more groups try to take advantage of released time, including Satanists, all these problems are only going to get worse. So the school board discussed this on September 23rd, and it was only a discussion. They weren't going to vote on anything. And then a week later, September 30th, like the beginning of this week, they had a second meeting and they were going to discuss this again. And now they can put it up for a vote. And at this meeting, like public comments lasted 2.5 hours. Like if you look at pictures from the news reports about this meeting, there are people in red representing LifeWise, and you had people in black representing like, let's not have release time at all. I don't get the color choices. Probably not ideal. But they're all just going to the podium making their case for why you should keep the policy or get rid of the policy. And here's the good news. The Westerville City Schools Board, they voted 4-0 to get rid of the policy completely. This is what it looks like now. Here is their policy on religious instruction. I will show you this. And if you can't really see it, it's because the whole thing is just crossed out now. Doesn't exist anymore. There are actually 5 school board members. One of them is relatively new, so I think that person abstained from the vote. But it was 4-0 to end release time for everybody. And what that means in practice is that LifeWise doesn't get to indoctrinate students during the school day anymore. Now, students are still allowed to skip school for religious reasons if their parents want to call them out, but it would be like an unexcused absence or whatever it is. If it's a faith-based holiday, kids can still leave school. What they can't do is skip school in the middle of the day for Bible class or any other class, because this is an anti-Bible. And how do you think Christians handled all this? They're not very happy. This is what one group said. If I can find this here. I don't know why this is highlighted, but whatever. Here we go. We've worked so well with the school district for the last 2 years. Had 300 students last year that attended LifeWise. So we were a little surprised that they felt they needed to take such an extreme action to rescind the policy rather than us being able to come to the table and figure out how we could continue to work together, said Jennifer Jury, program director for LifeWise Westerville. First of all, what's the extreme action? The extreme action is, hey, maybe the public school board, as public school board members, we should say kids should spend time in public schools and not leave during the day. There's nothing extreme about that. Like a public school district saying that students should spend time during the school day in school is normal, not extreme. And this lady said, why couldn't we come to the table and figure it out? Because there's no compromise to be had here. What compromise do you want? Released time is an all or nothing option. It's one or the other. If parents want their kids to get religious instruction, do it at home, do it on the weekend, do it at church, whatever. Same options you've always had. Nothing about the board's decision is anti-Christian. And I want to say the public school board has an obligation to make sure they are providing secular education to everybody without letting a Christian ministry or any other group get in the way of that. And if LifeWise doesn't like that, too damn bad. Now, this is a little bit of a side note. This is actually the second time this year the same school board has gotten rid of release time. A few months ago in August, there were concerns because LifeWise, when they were giving parents the permission slip to sign to take their kids out of school, the fine print said LifeWise has no liability if something happens to the kids while they are with their LifeWise program or their churches. Like, what if there's an accident on the bus on the way to church? LifeWise said, you can't blame us, you can't sue us. But then the school district said, well, if they can't come after you, even though you're in their like possession at the time, under your protection at the time, who can the parents blame? Is the district responsible if something happens while they're with you? So at that point, the district's like, we should not have liability for this. So they got rid of release time altogether. LifeWise came back and said, don't worry, we're going to get rid of that section of the fine print. Liability is ours when the kids are with us. And the district said, okay, fine, we'll put the release time back in. And now, months later, they're like, okay, legally speaking, everything's fine, but also you're just ruining the school day, so we're getting rid of release time anyway, which is interesting. One last thing about this story is that Ohio, as you may know, is a very red state. It's a Republican-dominated legislature thanks to gerrymandering. And even though that's on the ballot, and I hope if you live in Ohio, you're voting to get rid of partisan gerrymandering, but there is actually a push right now to make release time in public schools mandatory instead of optional. I mentioned earlier, right now, the law says public schools may offer release time. There is a push to change the law to say public schools shall offer released time, which means this whole conversation we're talking about would be moot because the Westerville schools would have no choice but to allow LifeWise to operate there. So one of the bill's sponsors, he's a Republican, Gary Click, he said about Westerville, the more they attack LifeWise, the more there is a consensus around the state that we have to do something. And again, look at what he said. The more they attack LifeWise, no one's attacking LifeWise. I mean, I'm attacking LifeWise because they're bad, but Westerville's school board is not. They're just looking out for the students. They didn't do anything that's anti-Christian. But you could see Republicans are already using this as like permission for them to move forward with that bill. So we'll see what happens. Okay, gonna stop there with this story before I move on. What questions we got here? It sounds like there are some reasonable Christians after all. There are many. They are out there. I think they're totally wrong when it comes to their theology, but when it comes to church-state separation, they are some of the best allies we could have. And I really do appreciate every time they speak out. I hope more of them do it. It's even better when it's like a pastor saying this stuff. It's great. I actually let my kids go to those Bible thumper things when they asked. Thankfully, they also realized it was a load of shit. As the saying goes, like if you want to, I'm going to butcher it here, but if you want to turn a kid into an atheist, just tell him to read the Bible. It's like sticking a bunch of cigarettes in your mouth, like old school dads. I don't know if this is a real thing they did, but it's like been on TV where like they just stick a bunch of cigarettes. You got to smoke all these at once. And then you get so sick that you never want to smoke again. That's what it is. Make a kid read the KJV Bible. They will become an atheist so fast. What did Andrew Seidel say? Like the road to atheism is paved with Bibles. I screwed that up. You get the point. But I'm right there with you. You want your kids to become atheists? Let them go to church. See what it's all about. I wonder if LifeWise is associated with Project 2025. They sound like they're in panic mode. You know what? I don't know if there is a direct connection, but I have no doubt that if you look at who's funding both of those types of things, the Heritage Foundation for Project 2025 and the company behind LifeWise, a lot of these groups do have the same donors who really like these types of projects. So that part wouldn't surprise me. But as far as I can tell, like right now, superficially, there's no direct connection between the two. Unanimous reason. I know. They voted 4-0 to rescind the release time policy. Very impressive. Good for them. I hope they don't get backlash for it. Why won't Democrats declare a war on Christian nationalism? I consider that terrorism. I'll skip the last part of that. Jared Huffman, Representative Jared Huffman, the congressman, has actually set up a task force to exposing Project 2025. If you go to his official House website, Jared Huffman, Huffman, you can see all the stuff he's posted and the hearings he's held about Project 2025. They do want people to know what it represents and why it's bad, even if you're religious. And he's just done a wonderful job of trying to expose it. But I mean, as much as a congressperson can do, I've actually been amazed at how much comedians, celebrities have used their platforms to call out this stuff. And I'm actually really grateful that Kamala Harris, Tim Walz are also calling it out, because that's the sort of thing that would have been in our circles and not break out of our bubbles at all a few years ago. Like Project Blitz years ago, I don't remember a lot of people outside the church state world talking about that. But 2025, man, Project 2025 is everywhere. And the more people know about it, the less they like it. All right. Like and subscribe, please. I'm going to jump to this other story here, which is also disturbing. Okay. This guy right here, this is a guy named Steven Anderson. He is what I would call a Christian hate preacher. He has said a bunch of horrible things. Listen, this whole segment, there are so many clips I would love to show you of what this dude has said in the past. And I can't, because if I played those clips, my whole channel would get demonetized and destroyed. So I'm just going to tell you the gist of things he said in the past. He is a new independent fundamentalist Baptist preacher, basically lives in his own little world. He's not connected to a larger movement. But this is a guy from Arizona who has said, like, he celebrated the deaths of murdered LGBTQ people. He has called on the government to execute gay people with the firing squad. He is so horrible in terms of the stuff he has said that 34 countries won't let him step foot within their borders anymore. And his acolytes include people like Jonathan Shelley and Aaron Thompson, who, if you look on my YouTube channel, a few months ago, I actually sat down for a very long, like 3-hour interview with those two dudes. Just the things they say are truly despicable. But more than anything, Steven Anderson is like the ringleader of the new IFB movement. Like on paper, these guys say we're all about the KJV Bible and, we're Bible believing, independent, whatever. In reality, and I've watched way too many of their sermons because I absolutely hate myself, all they ever seem to do, or at least more often than you would ever want them to, expect them to rather, they trash LGBTQ people, they trash Jewish people, they hate effeminate men. Everyone they deem to be heretical, they just go after every time. You will not hear them talk about, like, Jesus wants us to help the poor. No, it's always using slurs against gay people in like every sermon, no matter what the topic is. Okay, so why do I bring up Steven Anderson? Because, well, earlier this year, I found out, maybe it was a year ago, and I posted about this at the time. I may have made a video about it. I learned that one of his kids, Isaac, who is the second oldest of Stephen's 12 children, he has 12. The second oldest, that kid was a full-blown Nazi. He had a war eagle tattoo on his chest and everything. Like, I've listened to a lot of Steven Anderson, and I've heard him downplay the Holocaust. He's a Holocaust denier in the sense that he thinks the numbers of people killed are completely wrong. But I've never thought of him as like a Nazi supporter. I've never thought of him as racist. And when I asked him, hey, you know me, I'm the guy who writes about you all the time. What's the deal with your son, Isaac? Because this is messed up. Steven Anderson did write back to me, and he said, how dare I attack his son? That's unethical. No. And then he told me he wasn't personally racist or pro-Hitler, but he would not tell me that his son was wrong, which is telling. But okay, that was Isaac. I found that disturbing. I didn't think much about it after that because I'm like, see, this is what happens when you have a guy like Steven Anderson preaching. His kids might take it even further. Look at what happened with Isaac, right? That's disturbing stuff. But then earlier this year in January, and maybe Den, you could find this while I'm talking. Back in January of this year, there is a YouTuber named Dead Domain, Domain, and Dead Domain did an interview with Isaac. And I watched it because I'm like, what is Isaac going to say in this video? And honestly, a lot of what he talked about was just here's how I came to my beliefs about everything. And it wasn't really about anything hateful. I mean, Isaac admitted everything I just told you about his beliefs. They are truly disturbing. He wasn't apologizing for any of it, but he offered more of his backstory. And in that backstory, he talked about his troubling home life in which he was raised. He said he was still a Christian, obviously, but he spoke about being physically abused by his parents. He said that he plans to hit his own kids when he has them, even though he admitted that corporal punishment has its limitations because he was hit as a child and he doesn't think it was right. He's still going to do it, just like not as bad. I guess if there's anything surprising about the video, the interview with Isaac, it's that he kind of came across as a normal guy with a tough upbringing, kind of like how like this week in the debate, JD Vance came across as a normal dude until you start listening to what he says, and then it's really disturbing. That's Isaac. Like he just seemed like a guy who's had a rough life. And so maybe I'm not surprised that he took that route. But that's the thing about extremists, right? Like what makes them so dangerous is that they can often seem sensible on the surface. So that interview took place in January, and it was disturbing for some reasons, but enlightening, I guess, in other ways. And then I didn't think about it anymore because, again, I've already talked about Isaac. And then last month, something else unusual happened. Dead Domain posted an interview with someone named John Anderson. And John Anderson, I'll share this with you here. John Anderson is the third oldest of Stephen's 12 kids. This is John Anderson here. He did an interview with Dead Domain as well. Why? Because he watched Isaac's interview and he said, I'm willing to talk to you too about all this stuff. And he wanted to share his own story and make the case, and this is interesting, he wanted to make the case for why his parents, Stephen Anderson and his wife, should not have any contact with his siblings, including the 8 who still lived at home. Like, John was not a bad dude at all when you watched this interview. John basically said, yeah, the abuse that I suffered at the hands of Stephen Anderson and his mother, Susanna Anderson, he said it was really bad. Dead Domain introduced that video, and this is disturbing, so bear with me. The allegations that John made in the interview included closed fist beatings, whippings with electrical cords, insulting and belittling children as young as 6, starvation as punishment, and exposure to the elements. Like locking your kid outside the house when it's freezing cold out. And John said that when he began calling out his parents on, quote, their bullshit, he was basically kicked out of the house. And he's currently not allowed to speak to his siblings. He actually moved out when he was 18 and he's no longer welcome at home. And John said he had reported his parents to local authorities, but whatever they did, it wasn't enough. Nothing really happened. He also said his parents don't really like each other. And he attributed that to his parents dating for, get this, a grand total of 2 weeks before they got married. And also they came from very different backgrounds, which makes it even harder to bond in such a short amount of time. And part of that didn't bother me because, like, listen, a lot of people stay together even if they're not in love and even if they're constantly fighting, especially in fundamentalist circles. But you can see why it's very easy for Stephen Anderson to basically run the house the way he sees fit. John also mentioned that his 17-year-old sister was very unsafe in that home and, quote, she was trying to get away and my dad is trying to catch her right now and bring her back against her will. And by the way, he also said he's also 100% Christian. So after that video occurred, what was weird is that all the new IFB preachers basically came to Stephen Anderson's defense. Stephen Anderson made a video, which I think he deleted, But he accused his son of telling outright lies. And then, like, this is getting to 2 weeks ago or so, Jonathan Shelley, one of those other IFB preachers, he did a podcast where he said he wanted to speak out because, it's not fair for Steven Anderson to speak out about his family. But Jonathan Shelley said, look, I talked to Steven Anderson all about the allegations of abuse and love and all that stuff. And I came to the conclusion that Steven Anderson should not step down from the pulpit. He is still a good pastor. Well, what about all the abuse allegations, right? Jonathan Shelley said the kids are probably exaggerating. That was the word he used, exaggerating. He said they probably just didn't like being punished. They were being manipulated. They suffered from insecurity, and that they shouldn't talk to YouTubers who were using them because the internet, Jonathan Shelley said, allows them to air out a lot of dumb stuff. What about Dead Domain, the interviewer in all these cases? Shelley wrote in the video's description, this reprobate is taking advantage of Pastor Anderson's kids, and I hope they realize this and repent. They are not repenting. Anyway, so a day after that, I guess Jonathan Shelley reached out to John Anderson, the kid, and he's like, do you want to have a conversation about this? And John said, sure. And John was driving in the car when this phone call came in. And John decided to record their entire conversation. This is a 30-minute video on John Anderson's website. Again, I wish I could play you this, but it's not just like one clip to show you. There's so much to listen to here. And I went down the rabbit hole and listened to all of it this week. But this is like a 30-minute phone call where basically John talks to Jonathan Shelley about everything that has just transpired. I don't know if it's legal to record people, but whatever, that's a separate issue. In their conversation, which Shelley did not know was being recorded, he basically admitted Steven Anderson is violent and that his excuses do not contradict anything that John was saying. But he still downplayed all those allegations. And the reason Jonathan Shelley was wanting to talk to John in the first place is because he was hoping the kid could seek some reconciliation with his parents. And John said he wasn't going to do that unless his dad apologized for lying to his congregation about being abusive. And it didn't look like that apology was forthcoming. And this is the part that really got to me. When it came to the allegations that Steven Anderson physically abused his wife as well, which is something John brought up, what did Jonathan Shelley say? He said, I talked to your dad, I talked to Steven Anderson, and he says that anything he did to his wife, I'm quoting here, was consensual and that it was behind closed doors. That was in reference to physical abuse. Steven Anderson said it was consensual. Like, how is physical abuse ever consensual? And if it happens behind closed doors, how does that make it okay? Like, I wasn't asking for him to do it behind like a glass box or something. Like, it's just a ridiculous thing to say about physical abuse. But that is apparently all Jonathan Shelley needed to hear to be like, well, I guess you could still be a pastor at one of our churches. John pointed out, the son pointed out to Jonathan Shelley, his mom had told him she wants to get divorced. She wants custody of all the kids, even though that's really hard for like one woman with no outside the house career and 12 kids. But the reason that would never happen is because all of those older siblings said, we're not just going to testify against our dad. We would testify against you too, because you were just as guilty in terms of the abuse we suffered. And that's the reason she's not going to court to break out of this relationship, according to John. And what did Jonathan Shelley, the pastor, say about all that? Every woman is irrational, and every woman runs her mouth, and every woman says the dumbest crap. Seriously, older man saying that about women. Anyway, it was a disturbing conversation. Glad it was recorded so we could hear it. But the biggest thing is Jonathan Shelley just ignored what he acknowledged was physical abuse. Like, if it was done in private, apparently anything goes. And I'm not done yet, because guess what? Last week, guess what else happened? Dead Domain posted another interview with another child of Steven Anderson. And this time he interviewed Miriam Anderson, who is the oldest daughter in the family. And she's also the one John brought up earlier because she had been trying to get away from the family. And her story is like, I want to give this person just a giant hug if that's allowed, because it was just so terrifying. Many of the recollections Miriam brought up, I mean, they echoed what her brothers said earlier about how abuse occurred at home. She even mentioned specific pieces of equipment in their kitchen that were used against them. She talked about how she had thoughts about ending her life from the age of 11 onward. I mean, just horrible stuff. Her brother's stories, she said, were 100% true. And interestingly enough, she mentioned how during a summer camp she attended, she was talking to friends there. She let details about her home life slip out, and a counselor there heard it. And that counselor was a mandated reporter. So they had to tell Child Protective Services. And guess what happened after CPS got involved? It only made the drama at home worse, because now her parents were mad that other people knew about what was happening inside their home. So Miriam decided to go live with her aunt and uncle in South Carolina, totally across the country, other side of it. The uncle is Steven Anderson's brother. She went to go live with them. She told her parents she wasn't going to come home. And like, to try to alleviate their anger, ease their anger, she said, I'm not going to go public about this, but I don't want to come back home. What did they do in response? Well, she was still on their, like, they were still paying for her phone and laptop. So they cut her off entirely so she can't communicate with the outside world. She was 17. She is 17 as all this is happening. Just really disturbing. She also told a really scary story from this year about how she found out her dad was coming to South Carolina to take her back home. And she had to spend it was a crazy 24, 48 hours to try to avoid him. She said she was hiding in a ditch. She went to a hospital, checked into a hospital because he couldn't get her in there. She also pointed out that she's a Christian too, just not the type of Christian he is. And in fact, she said she's a Christian despite her parents, because they make her doubt her religion more than anything else she's ever done. It wasn't until she met decent Christians that she was drawn to the faith. And so after Miriam spoke out this past week, Steven Anderson made another video. What's amazing is that Steven Anderson is banned on YouTube, but he still keeps using sock puppet accounts, which he's not allowed to do, to just put up other videos, or his followers put up videos. But basically, he made a video where he just doxed the hell out of his brother who lives in South Carolina, puts up phone numbers of everyone involved, says that his brother stole his daughter Miriam, which is not true. She says she went to live with them because she just felt safer there. And then he writes in the description of the video, that is where I believe she is still being kept against our will. She is a minor, not old enough to consent. And then throughout the video, it just keeps giving away her location and practically encouraging people to harass his brother. That's how disturbing it is. Miriam, as far as I can tell, is no longer in South Carolina. I'm not sure why she left, if she left to get away from her dad. But this is something she posted on Facebook, basically responding to all of this. And it's long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But one thing that's really disturbing is she says she met her boyfriend at a church in South Carolina. They hit it off. She actually got her dad's permission to get coffee with him the next morning before they went soul winning together. And he talked to my dad. He's been listening to my dad's sermons. He asked my dad's permission to date me. And he came to visit. But when her dad came to visit her, it basically ruined her relationship. Where is that? It's right in the middle here. Everyone who met him liked him immediately, but they ruined our relationship. He can no longer come to see me because I'm not living in South Carolina anymore. Her dad coming to steal her meant he couldn't hang around her the boyfriend couldn't hang around anymore. She also says my uncle did not steal me. She says all this stuff. Again, I hope she's okay. I'm not sure where she is, but I hope she's safe. Dead Domain told me she seems to be doing okay, and I'm really happy to hear that. I hope that's the case. I did want to play one video for you, which is this past Sunday, Steven Anderson did his usual Sunday sermon. He does 2 a week. And I'm going to play for you a clip from that sermon. Also disturbing, also very predictable, but he's not happy that everyone's going public about how horrible he is. Here is a clip from the sermon. I forgot if it's edited, like if I tried to splice together a few things, but you'll see it if it's there.
My accusers teamed up with a literal Satan-worshiping transvestite. Amen. Okay, and you know what? We could pretty much almost just close our Bibles and go home right now. Okay? Because anybody with a brain in their head knows that you don't go to Satan to tell the truth. You go to Satan because you want to tell lies. Okay? The guy is in drag. He is a man dressed up as a woman. The video that all these Christians are promoting this week and sending around all over the internet, literally you click on it. The first thing you're going to see is a man in makeup in a flowery dress with a Satan symbol. But isn't it interesting that all three of them, they all went to a transvestite, open faggot, reprobate. And you know why? Because God is showing people who's telling the truth and who's lying. That's why. Anybody who actually loves the Lord and loves the truth can easily figure out the truth because God in his providence worked it out where my enemies were too stupid to actually attack me in a way that could even be seen as legitimate, but they all went straight to literal Satan so that everybody who actually cares about the truth and what the Bible says will know that they're lying because Satan is the father of lies. Amen. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 28, verse 6.
Always got to go back to the Bible. Sorry, that was so loud. I'll make it quieter when I upload this. But yeah, he's not handling this well. Did you notice that he's calling his own kids like accusers? Like, what a weird way to talk about your kids. For what it's worth, I asked Dead Domain, "Hey, are you a literal Satan worshiping transvestite?" And the answer was no. Also, not literally Satan. Not how the word literally works. I just want to let me publicly shout out and give my appreciation to Dead Domain for just all that incredible work. Because in addition to those interviews they posted with those kids, the kids obviously have enough trust to share their stories with this person on YouTube. Dead Domain has also posted like separate commentary on all of these details. I would not know anything I'm sharing with you if not for Dead Domain. So I just want to give a huge shout out to them for doing all this work. Dead Domain told me this week, we chatted on the phone, they're still in contact with the Andersons' kids, but that may not last because for all the positive support people like John Anderson have received for speaking out, there is also targeted harassment against those kids. It may be easier for them to keep quiet than subjecting themselves to disaster by speaking out against their dad. I mean, it's hard enough to revisit your traumatic childhood. Imagine how much worse it is when your own father is condemning you to his cult followers in real time. And also, you know, the next oldest kid is also a minor still at home, so we're probably not going to see any interviews about that. Dead Domain was urging people to contact local authorities. Maybe Dead Domain told me, I really hope that these allegations can get law enforcement or CPS to do a proper investigation so these kids and their stories and their safety can be taken more seriously. And so in a way, I guess, I mean, this is a heartbreaking story, but it's also uplifting in a way. Uplifting because at least two of those kids do not share the worst characteristics of their father. And they also want the public to know what their lives have been like. And they are bursting the bubble that their daddy has kept around them for years. Like, I always knew his version of Christianity is a nightmare. But it turns out his theology isn't just awful to people like me. It's awful to his own flesh and blood. And if those kids can escape that environment, and they sure as hell are trying, and they come out as apparently decent as they are, there's so much hope for other people in that situation. I just hate that they have to play it cautiously because of who this guy is and what he's capable of. Like, no one should have to fear harm from their own parents. But when your parents place the idea of God's word over common sense and basic human decency, you got to hope these kids find solace and safety somewhere. I did reach out to Steven Anderson to see if he had any other comment on these more recent videos. This time he did not respond to me, but we'll see if he responds anymore. I will leave it at that for now. What questions we got? I got one more story for you after this. But for now, how many kids does Standerson have? Steven Anderson has 12. Got the dozen, and now I don't know if he's done. If he was caught acting on the ideas he pushes, he'd be sentenced to life in prison. Here's the thing about Steven Anderson and Jonathan Shelley and Aaron Thompson and all those guys. They strike me as very much like Trump in this way. They know how to incite others to do things they would never do themselves. I don't actually think those guys are personally violent to strangers. I don't think they would like go looking for a fight. That's different from like the physical abuse at home. But the reason I was willing to interview them in person is because I didn't think I was going to be in danger talking to them. They don't strike me as those types of people. But as I pointed out to them, when they say things like gay people deserve to be executed because the Bible commands it, and that it would be totally fine to do if we had a righteous government, as I've said to them, and as I've said many times without them, that sort of thing, you don't know who's listening to that message, who wants to become a vigilante and take the law into their own hands. And that's the same thing. I don't think Steven Anderson would do the things he says, but I wouldn't put it past some of his followers to follow up on that and try to become a hero and a martyr for the cause. And there has been an instance, and I brought this up during my interview with those guys, where one of the guys that visited Aaron Thompson's church was arrested with weapons on his way to a pride parade. That could have ended badly. That guy was arrested ahead of time, but that guy was a member of Thompson's church. And it's like, what would have happened here? Because my guess is Aaron Thompson, had something bad happen, would not have said, well, that guy was a bad egg. He's a horrible person. No, they would have celebrated that guy. Like, God must have had a plan for him. Oh, well. So that's my fear. I'm less concerned about Anderson outside his home than I am about the people who follow people like that, because I don't know what crazy things they might be doing. You can hear the rage in his voice. Yeah, he's always at an 11, never gets any lower, even when he's talking about normal stuff. He gets mad about everything. Teaching children to be bigots should be considered child abuse, an awful thing to do to a child. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I know how I talk to my kids, and I mean, I feel like I'm not as careful as other people are in terms of what I say around them. And even I'm like, oh my God, I would be horrified if they ever got these thoughts that any of this sort of thing would be okay. I cannot imagine hitting my kids over anything. Like, I'll stare at them with like an evil death stare, but my God, would never put my hands on them. And I cannot, for the life of me, imagine how some parents can do that sort of thing, much less teaching them about it. Yeah. Sign up for the newsletter. I'm sorry I'm running late. I got one more story for you. I hope that's okay. And this one's ending on just a random interesting note because I'm a nerd and I found this interesting. That's really about it. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about a law review article that I found fascinating. And I don't read many of these, but I was intrigued by every part of this. So let me start with just a backstory here. In 2005, there was a man named Amir Kando. And basically, he went to the back stairwell of his apartment building and began stabbing his neighbor with a knife. And it was an unprompted attack. It nearly killed his neighbor. I think the guy survived. But Kando, he was soon charged with first-degree murder in addition to other charges. And eventually, he was declared by a trial judge to be guilty but mentally ill, which basically said maybe this guy has a mental illness, but it wasn't so profound that he didn't know that what he was doing was wrong. And that judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison. And then, as happens with all these types of cases, his lawyer appealed the decision higher up. And what was amazing is that ruling, that prison sentence, it was reversed. And Kando was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Basically, the court's majority said that based on earlier testimony, this guy would not have been able to comprehend the criminality of his conduct at the time of his offense. They said they knew he was not of a sound mind when he began attacking his victim. And how did they know that? How were they able to conclude that this guy was like out of his mind when he began attacking the victim? Because how did they know he was under the grip of a psychotic delusion, as they wrote in their decision? Well, Kondo basically said he was acting on God's wishes and trying to eliminate Satan, who was his neighbor, in order to bring peace to the world for the next 1,000 years. And the judges said if he was thinking like that, this guy is obviously messed up. And I'm going to show you what those judges actually wrote in their ruling here. Check this out. I know it's long and I know it's a block of text, but here you go. No one suggested an alternative motive for defendant's attack other than to eliminate Satan, pursuant to a commandment from God. No one suggested or imputed any other design or motive to explain his actions other than his delusion, namely that the victim was Satan, whom he was determined to kill or incarcerate for 1,000 years. Accordingly, defendant's ability to appreciate the criminality of his conduct must be viewed from the perspective of this delusion, that whatever he did was to implement a divine command to attack the victim, whom he envisioned as a demon or Satan. Thus, from the outset, there is no reason to think that this guy, in carrying out this command, would necessarily know that his divine commission of destroying a demon or Satan would be unlawful. Which is a long way of saying, look, this guy did it because he thought he was God and he was acting under God's orders and he had to destroy Satan. He said that. Everyone believes he really did think that. And if that's the case, like, he was clearly messed up in the head. He didn't know what he was doing was illegal. He thought he was doing something based on God's word. And listen, the judges are not saying that's true. They're saying he really did believe this. And if he believed it, obviously he's crazy. And if he's crazy, we can't say he's guilty because he didn't know what he was doing, right? So they said he was trying to kill Satan. It's a divine command. He had no idea what he was doing was illegal. And so they decreased the prison sentence for the guy. Anyway, the reason I bring up that story is because I was reading this law review article. It's by a professor named L. Joe Dunman. He's a professor at the University of Louisville, Brandeis School of Law. And he just published a paper where he talks about this religious insanity defense. And the thing that I found so interesting is his argument is that when a court says someone is insane because they're suffering from a religious delusion, the court is basically saying the suspect holds beliefs that are not true. That's what a delusion is, right? You believe something that's not true. But if you're saying that person holds a religious belief that is not true, the courts are taking a position on religion, which is not something courts are supposed to do, right? Famously. This is what he says at the top of his paper here. Look at this top paragraph. To declare that a religiously delusional criminal defendant is insane requires a court to declare as a matter of fact and law that their religious beliefs are untrue. The First Amendment prohibits this, which is a really interesting thing to think about, because that's true. We've had a lot of discussions in the legal system about, if someone discriminates against someone else, but they do it because their religion told them to, are they allowed to get away with it? Is it really discrimination then? And the Supreme Court lately has basically said, well, if it's for religious reasons, we should really let it slide. But if a court says, no, you have a religious delusion, isn't that taking a position on religion that the courts are not supposed to do? I think that's interesting. If someone says God spoke to me and told me to commit a crime, we might say you're insane. But what part of that is actually delusional? because a lot of Christians would say God speaks to them. That's not weird in Christian circles. And it's not weird for Christians to act on what they think God said to them. You know, whether it's fundamentalist Christians saying, God told me to marry this person, even though we haven't been dating long, or maybe a pastor's like, I asked God, should I take a job in another state? God told me yes, and I'm going to listen to God. Like they all say they talk to God. They all say they're acting on God's orders because God says it's part of the plan. That's not weird in Christian circles. But if millions of people think God speaks to them personally, is it really a delusion? Not according to some definitions. Like a delusion is something like you believe that's crazy, but if everyone believes it, it's not really a delusion. So if someone hears God, then acts on it, and that action is criminal, how fair is it to call that a delusion? That's the dilemma. And the thing that this professor wrote is that for several reasons, most legal definitions of delusion lose their usefulness when we apply it to religion. And he brings it back to that example I mentioned earlier. Check this out. Amir Kondo, he says, Amir Kondo, for example, claimed to be in constant communication with God and Jesus and at constant war with Satan, who God told him to lock up. Though few people might believe that God speaks directly to Amir Kondo, many people believe that God speaks directly to them, and a majority of Americans still believe in the devil as God's supernatural nemesis. Why would Kondo's thematically common religious statements not meet sanity's acceptability threshold? Why is what he believes weird? The judges said it was a delusion, but a lot of people think this way. And why is the court taking a position on that? So this professor spent a lot of time looking at how the legal system tries to define delusion and whether something is objectively false. But it gets really complicated quickly because the legal system doesn't have any way to prove someone is wrong when they cite their faith. And I really liked this example that he brought up. Look at this one right here. Here we go. For example, a person who believes themselves to be pregnant but is incapable of pregnancy expresses a delusional belief because the pregnancy would defy physical reality. By contrast, a pregnant person who believes their pregnancy to be the result of an immaculate conception with God is not delusional, legally speaking, basically because there's no proof that that's false. You can't, like, if you say I'm pregnant, God impregnated me, how are we supposed to say, legally speaking, that's not true? Especially if there's no father in the picture. It's very weird. In the same paper, like you could play the game with the Eucharist, for example. Catholics believe consecrated wafers are literally the body of Christ. Is that true? No, of course not. But also, if you sent a consecrated communion wafer to like a scientific lab along with a non-consecrated wafer, are they going to detect a difference? No, of course not. Is it a delusion to believe that a consecrated wafer is the body of Christ? Well, from a legal perspective, the answer is no, because millions and millions of people believe that. Atheists might call that a delusion, and we're right, but judges don't have that same sort of leeway. And so my point here, all of us, we do not want government officials to take sides on religion. But the legal system, by allowing people to declare someone insane because they're suffering from like a religious delusion, they are taking a position on religion. When a court accepts a religious insanity plea, they are taking the position that whatever religious beliefs this person holds is bullshit. And the judges have no choice but to say it's bullshit in order to find someone like Kondo delusional and therefore insane and therefore not guilty. And again, it's not like the judges are going to get called out on it, because if they're imprisoning people who say God told them to commit murder, like, yeah, we want them to be able to do that. Those are religious delusions, we might think. But you also can't tell the judges to stop doing that, because consider the slippery slope here. If we tell judges you're not allowed to say someone is suffering from a religious delusion, because that's not your place, stay out of your lane, what's stopping every criminal defense lawyer from saying their clients who might struggle with a mental illness are simply obeying God's orders, right? And this is what the professor said to basically summarize all of this, I hope you're still with me. I don't know if I'm still with me here at this point. The law cannot objectively tell religion from not religion, nor can it objectively tell religion from insane delusion. Neither can psychiatrists, on whom the law often relies. When criminal defendants claim insanity because they suffer from religious delusions, courts are left conducting de facto religious truth tests, declaring insane defendants who are delusional because they believe religious things that all of us assume to be false. But that's not what they're supposed to be doing, right? So, what's the solution here? Judges can just say some religious beliefs are false, but they have no business making that call. But if we say they're not allowed to do that, it creates a loophole that's like big enough for a monster truck to drive through. So, how do we resolve this? Can judges say religious beliefs are delusional, but still follow the Constitution and the rights of the accused, right? And what the professor suggested is a waiver. Okay. The professor said all we need is for the judge to basically make a speech in the courtroom. And here's what it would sound like. Under the First Amendment, you have the right to religious freedom. Normally, that means no judge or jury may test the truth or falsity of any religious beliefs you hold. Do you understand that? And let's say they say yes. Then the judge goes on. This part is crucial. The defendant must be made aware that in order to determine if you were insane when you were committing your crime, we have to determine that you suffered from a delusion and that your delusional beliefs are false. Basically, you're asking the defendant, do I have permission to say that everything you believe is bullshit? And if the defendant or the defense lawyer say, yeah, that's fine, then it's appropriate for the judge to say your religious beliefs are delusional and therefore you're not guilty because you're insane or something like that. And by doing this, you're bypassing the First Amendment restriction. Anyway, I don't know. I found that interesting. It's a potential solution to a problem that's just gone under the radar. But that might create new concerns too, because as you might expect, if we allow judges to say, hey, buddy, is it okay for me to say your religious beliefs are bullshit? I assume conservative Christians, the people who have like hijacked the federal judiciary for the past few decades, they might push back against any judge even being allowed to say religion is false, even with permission, even if it's for the sake of trying to fix a problem that cannot be solved right now. So anyway, this paper is fascinating. I will have a link when this video goes up, and it's scheduled to appear in the Wayne Law Review in 2025. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a dude who read this and I thought it was interesting. And I hope any of that made sense. I have no idea. It is late. I am done. What questions do we have here? All right. Thank you for watching. Go to Den's Discord party. The link will be in the comment thread right now, so you could join. It's Den's birthday. Wish him a happy birthday for me. I'm going to go to bed, and I will see all of you next week. If you haven't already, go to patreon.com/Hemant to support this show. And also, you can always subscribe for free at friendlyatheist.com if you want to see these articles in writing. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for lasting. I know it was a long one. I'll see you next Friday. Thanks, everybody.